Okay, now we're going to put on the valve cover for this side. Now we're just going to secure it with all the 10s. Alright, we're going to tighten these down. Torque spec is 105 inch-pounds, but honestly, I don't have a torque wrench that goes that low. Plus, these aren't a huge deal, so just tightening them lightly with a 1/4 inch. I'm doing it in a spiral pattern just because that's always a good practice, so it seals nicely. Okay, now we're going to put the right rear timing cover back on. Okay, we're going to put the bolts in now, and we're also just going to put a little bit of sealant on the threads of the bolts. Tighten to 20 foot-pounds, and the M10s are going to tighten to 40 foot-pounds. Okay, 40 foot-pounds. There we go. Can't forget these guys. Okay, I tightened these two bolts. Now we have a bolt in the back that connects to this timing cover as well. It's a 15. Okay, now we're going to tighten the power steering pump by just reaching through this pulley here. Sorry, my camera kind of had a mind of its own just then. Okay, next I just put on this bracket. And this little bar here coming off the bracket. They're held on the side of the head by two 15s. I'm going to wait to tighten them down until I get the alternator in here, because these sort of mount the alternator to the head. Alright, so I'm going to install the alternator now. And then that will slide on here. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to tighten this bracket right here now that the alternator bolt is in. Okay, so that's tight. Now it's hard for you to see, but there's another little bracket there that's held on by this bolt. I'm going to put that in next. Again, it's hard to see, but I'm going to tighten the bracket, this other bracket that I just mentioned, first, and then the bolt that attaches to the alternator. And then we have one more down here. Okay, now we're going to move on to the left bank. Going to put this head gasket on. Alright, now we have the other head to put on. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing we just did with the other head. Going to thread them in by hand first. Okay, now we're going to torque them again in the same exact way we did the first one. So the first one is going to be 45 foot-pounds. Next we have 65 foot-pounds. Then we have 65 foot-pounds again. Okay, now we're going to rotate each one 90 degrees. Alright, now we're going to put the left valve cover on. Make sure nothing's pinched between the two mating surfaces. And there was something. Okay, next we have this exhaust manifold to put back on. I'm just going to thread all the bolts in. Don't know if you could see it, but in the process of putting these bolts in, I found that the exhaust manifold is cracked. So in the interest of saving money, I'm just going to weld it. I don't think it's cracked deep enough to have an exhaust leak because it didn't have an exhaust leak before. Okay, just like the other one, I snugged them going from the middle out. Now I'm going to torque them to 200 inch-pounds. Okay, so since those exhaust shields are all broken up and there were broken studs inside, I just decided to drill a hole through both exhaust shields and then put a bolt and a nut in. Again, in the interest of saving money and time. I welded the exhaust. I don't think it's going to hold. Usually when you weld cast iron exhaust manifolds, they do not hold. So anyway, we'll see what happens. Well, might as well put the coils back. Now we're going to put on the left rear timing cover. I have a new O-ring right here for the water pump. And I try to clean up the surfaces as much as possible. Okay, let's bolt it in. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to coat each bolt with some sealant. Wires sort of go back, they go right back to where they live most of the time. Okay, I hooked these two main connectors to this bracket, and now I'm going to plug in the alternator. There we go. Okay, I'm going to tighten these bolts that hold down the two main wiring harness plugs. Alright, let's plug in the cam sensor. Alright, now I'm going to put on all these little 10s to hold down the wiring harness. Now I'm going to plug in the connector to the main computer. Go. I'm also going to get these two plugs right here. Alright, so let's connect the alternator hot wire next. There we go. Put the little boot on it. There. Plug it in the O2 sensor. Okay, it was hard to show you, but I also plugged in the electrical connector going to the power steering pump down there. Alright, now we're going to put on the air conditioning bracket, the compressor bracket. Okay, now we're going to move the compressor back into place. Alright, now I'm going to plug in this oxygen sensor, as well as the compressor clutch. Alright, next we have this bracket vacuum manifold thing here that all the vacuum lines are connected to. So I just routed this one back, put these wires through, and now we're going to tighten the two 15s holding it on. Okay, now we have this electrical connector to attach it to. There we go. Next we have these two grounds that are attached to this 10 right here. Alright, so let me explain what I just did. There was a ground right there, that 10, and then there's a ground underneath it. It's a 15. It's right there. It's kind of hard to see because that little ribbon cable is in the way. But basically this little ribbon cable thing split and was an engine to body ground, and that broke because it was rusted. So what I had to do is I had to remove this reservoir and run a new engine to body ground cable on that. So that's where we're at now. The next thing we have to do is install the camshaft sprockets and the timing belt. So I've lifted up the engine and I've installed new camshaft bolts. I'm going to install this one now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to thread these in and not tighten them. We're going to tighten them after the timing belt is on. Okay, so here we are in the back of the left cylinder head. There's this plate right here that's held in by 3 bolts. So I just took 2 off, loosened this one so I can pull it to the side. What's going to happen is you see that there's a hole in the camshaft, and this camshaft is for the special alignment tool hole to slip in. So the way this works is the special tool bolts into this hole and that hole, and has a little peg that sticks into this, and that stops the camshaft from rotating, and that allows you to tighten the camshaft sprocket without it moving. So if you look over here, I have it already installed. Here it is right here. You can see how it bolts in, and you might even be able to see the peg. It goes through both sides, so you can use it on both sides. Okay, so off camera, what I did was I compressed this tensioner. You need to compress it really slow in a vise. It should take about 5 or so minutes to compress it, maybe about half an inch. You go really slowly, you compress it, and when you do, you put use a little roll pin to put it through the holding. So now we're going to put the tensioner in, and when we're ready, after the timing belt's on, we're going to take this off and it's going to push out and put tension on the belt. Okay, so tensioner goes back here. Put the bolts in, let's tighten them up. Alright, so I'm going to align these camshafts because these camshafts swivel on their shaft. So I'm going to align them to where they were before. Okay, so we're going to start at the crankshaft when we put this timing belt on. And we're going to go in a counterclockwise fashion, and we're going to keep it taut as we're putting it on. And the reason for that is we want all the slack to be at the tensioner at the end. That way when we let the tension out, there's no slack on the belt. Okay, now we're going to pull the grenade pin and get this tensioner to release. There. When you do this, get something stronger than a roll pin. Okay, so now we're ready to tighten the camshafts, camshaft bolts. So these are in the same spot as they were. Both timing marks fall between the two dots up here. So we're gonna go ahead and tighten them now. So the tool is on it, it's stopping it from rotating. But I'm gonna also hold it with this wrench just for a little added security so it doesn't rotate when I'm tightening it. So this is gonna be 75 foot-pounds plus a 90-degree turn. Didn't even really need this, wasn't moving at all. Okay, so I have my torque angle meter on. I'm gonna tighten it. Extra 90 degrees. There we go. Okay, now we're gonna do the same thing for the other camshaft, except torque it to 85 foot-pounds and then a 90-degree turn.